They held hands again, and as the elevator door closed, they leaned in to kiss. "Carson, you can stop," Trevor said, but Jen stopped him coldly. "Shut up and watch," she said in a cold voice. "You both." When I turned to look at my wife, her face showed panic and shame. I saw her lips tremble as she tried to look away from the screen. The scene then changed to inside a hotel room. And yes, our stars gave a show. Deb and Trev were both naked, and she was kneeling in front of him. When I turned to look at my crying wife, I couldn't help myself. "And I thought that you would cheat with someone more," I said. "Fuck you, Carson." Trev finally spoke. But he didn't say anything as Jen spanked him and glared. "That was good," Trev said there. "Do you feel just as good with him?" "Sometimes," my wife answered when her mood changed. "I asked you not to mention Carson when we did this." "Why not? Bad conscience?" he said, returning to the room. "I just don't want to talk about him." "You're killing the mood, Trev," she replied. After that, they lay down on the bed, and the video lasted almost an hour. They both took a nap. Deb was the first to wake up and lay with her face turned away from Trevor. Then he woke up and reached out to her. She didn't resist and allowed him to turn her over onto her stomach. Jen, who had seen the video before, looked at her husband with cold, hard ease. He was angry, but resigned himself to seeing evidence of his betrayal of his wife. For her part, my wife stopped watching and sobbed quietly in her arms. The faucet went out. Trevor glared at me as Jen stood up and came to sit next to me. "Well," she said, "that was quite instructive, wasn't it?" Debbie finally looked at me. "How did you find out?" That's all she asked for. I turned the screen back on as expected. Last week, he and Jen were talking in our kitchen. Jen: "It's true what they say about people who are away from their families on business trips?" Deb: "I wouldn't worry too much, Jen. Trev always comes to your house, doesn't he?" Jen: "Yes, but I wonder what he does when he's alone, if he is alone." Deb: "Jen, he comes home to you. Don't pay attention to what happens when he's not there." Jen: "What do you mean, Deb?" Deb: "Exactly what I said. What happens when people are not home means nothing. What happens outside the house means nothing. What happens outside the house means nothing. What happens outside the house means nothing." For added effect, I replayed the last phrase for them 3 times. "Here's what happened, Deb," I said. "That's what gave you away. This made me think you were cheating on me. I didn't know with whom, but then I realized that you were allowing yourself to do this." "I already had suspicions," Jen intervened. "The way you two always manage to cross paths on trips. How you sometimes avoid each other in conversation." She stopped and turned to me. "It's funny how they felt guilty tonight and kept checking on each other. You were both pathetic." "I hired investigators in all 4 cities you went to," I said. She winced and shook her head. She sobbed again, knowing more was coming. The next video was of Deb with another man at a bar and then walking towards a hotel room. "Oh, you bitch!" Trevor shouted to her. "Did you cheat on me?" Jen and I burst out laughing at his outburst and the desperation on my wife's face. They stared at each other and then back at us. "But wait," I remarked sarcastically. "That's not all." The video continued with Trevor in a room in Las Vegas with a slender and muscular black woman. "My husband never does this to me," said the black woman. "I was glad to help," Trevor replied, entering the bathroom, and the black woman could be heard wiping his sperm off her ass with a napkin. Unable to contain myself, I clapped my hands. Debbie just shook her head in disgust. "What a beauty," Jen said then. "Fraudsters deceive each other. Priceless footage." After that, we all became quiet. Everyone is in their own thoughts. Deb was the first to speak. "Carson," she said, looking at me with trembling lips and voice, "so what remains for us?" That's when I turned and looked at her seriously. "You know," I told them both, "Jen and I had a few days to come to an agreement and talk. We are both cooperative people. In fact, neither of us are prudes. If either or both of you had raised the issue of our exchange, perhaps we would have agreed. Honestly, I was thinking about asking you, Deb, but you chose a different path, didn't you? You could ask me openly and honestly so that we can make this decision and walk this path together. Instead, You chose the selfish way of doing what you like and keeping me in the dark. You chose lies and betrayal of me, us. You betrayed us, Debbie. How can I forgive this? How can I get past you who decide to go behind my back and think you have the right to do whatever you want when you travel? Well, not only when traveling. How long did it take you to start doing this here? I bet they already did, Jen said. I was told at his work that your dear wife took him to lunch several times. Debbie turned away, and so did Trevor. So what do you want? Trevor finally asked. Well, Jen said, looks like we have everything we need for the two of you. Neither of us have children, so all we have to worry about is dividing our assets. And since adultery can be used in court in Texas, you're both screwed. Literally. Give me your phone numbers, both of you, I said. Open them. Deb winced, but held it out unlocked. Trevor balked, but Jen came over and simply snatched the cell phone from him. It's not locked, she answered, handing it to me. Give me a minute. I'll check his cloud account. It took her a few minutes, during which I checked Deb's phone. She didn't write anything down either, but I glanced at her gallery to find photos of Trev and another man. Cool, Deb, I told her, shaking my head when she looked away. So this is how it will happen. I can never trust again. Too many lies, for too long. While I was talking, Jen was calling. Let's go, she said, and turned to look at what was happening. You both work in companies where there are moral standards. Have you forgotten about this? I saw almost panic on their faces. Both your bosses and their legal departments would be very disappointed with your antics. One of them is a skirt chaser himself, but his company had to pay for one of his indiscretions, so now he lets his HR and legal departments go after those who break the rules. This must be your boss, Trevor. Damn, he muttered. That's why you got in trouble, asshole, Jen told him. I gave you everything you ever asked for in bed. I gave you all of myself and never held back unless I was sick. You hit me in the back, Trevor. It's all over between us. Well, not yet. What do you mean? Well, I picked up the story. Divorces are a given, and you will both sign papers giving us 70% of the assets. If you fight with us, your videos will go to your families and friends as well as your employers. Carson, Debbie looked at me pleadingly. Please do not. Maybe we can try to figure it out? Seriously, Deb? I grinned. If you saw a video of me having sex with Jen behind your back, would you try to figure it out? Please give me a chance. I did it, Deb, I snapped. You and I were in trouble before you left on your fucking tour, and you decided to do it anyway. You decided to start taking the pills without talking to me. We are married. We decided to live together and make decisions together. You betrayed me and my trust even before you cheated on me with him or anyone else. You lost respect for me, so this was easy for you. I just want to know one thing. Why? She looked away, then looked at me again. Before you, I never had experience communicating with other men. One guy came in less than a minute later. Carson, this was my experience before you. I wanted to try others and see what it was like. I stared at her in disbelief. You should have thought about that before you married me, I replied. This is when people try others, not after they get married. Marriage is not just a commitment, it is a contract between two people. This means it's just the two of them against the world, and that marriage is exclusive until both parties agree to it. Well, you know, about leaving everyone else behind? She wanted to say something, but stopped, and then spoke. Carson, I wanted to go out and have fun before the wedding, but you showed up, and I didn't want to risk losing you. The first few years everything was so good between us, but this last year everything came back to me. I began to wonder what other men would be like. Not love. That's why I had you. Only sex. That's all I wanted. I shook my head in disappointment. All you had to do was ask me, Deb. All you had to do was talk to me. Here at home, we could find people we know and trust. Damn it, I would have let you have sex with that asshole if we all decided to do it together since we were all friends. Instead, you two went behind our backs and violated our trust. Debbie, with trust and love comes respect. You've lost all respect for me to go behind my back. We could figure this out together. But you decided to do it without me. Jen nodded along with me in agreement. "That goes for you too, Trev," she said. Especially after we talked. It was my turn to look at her in surprise as Trevor turned away and Debbie looked at Jen and Trevor in shock. "Did you do this?" she asked. "What did he say?" "That bastard told me he would never share me with Carson and that he would leave me if I talked about it again or he caught me." "Can you believe it?" Debbie shook her head at Trevor and then pushed away and punched him. "You stupid bastard," she said, as he tried to cover himself from the second and third blow. "When we started, I said we should bring them, didn't I? But you said no, that they will never cope with this and will abandon us. I listened to you. Now where are we?" "You've turned into a slut, Deb." "It didn't take long," he said angrily. "And after me, you started looking for others. So don't act like a saint. I remember our first kiss at Christmas last year. You let me kiss you for a minute or two while Jen was in the bathroom and Carson went out to the car. It didn't take me long to get you into bed. Actually, less than a week." I remembered that night. Everything seemed so perfect, celebrating with our best friends, and while his wife and I were out of sight, he and my wife were kissing. "I fucking hate you," she said back to him. "It's fucking mutual," he replied. Jen and I watched them glower at each other for a few minutes. We looked at them with contempt and distrust. Was there any hope after that? It looked hopeless. There are too many lies and too much betrayal along the way. If we had kids or were older, I might have been weak and thought about it. But I was young, and there were no children who could bind us to each other. I wanted to leave. The doorbell rang again. This time, Jen opened it. She returned with a woman who was carrying 2 bags and a smartphone. "Deborah Madison Kane?" she asked my wife, who nodded. "You have been served." She gave her the envelope and took her photo. "Trevor Gunderson?" she asked Trev, who nodded reluctantly. "You have been served." Debbie was now openly sobbing with papers in her hands. Jen turned to me and shrugged. Then she approached her husband. "It's all over between us. Go home, pack up your junk, and get out. I never want to see you again. Understand? If you tell me anything, the video will go to your parents, your work, and anyone else you can call a friend. Understood?" Deb didn't move. But then she turned to me and did something I didn't expect. She knelt down and crawled over to me and Jen. "I beg you both, please forgive me and give me another chance. I know I screwed up. It's all my fault. Do whatever you want with me. Just don't throw me out into the street, Carson. Please. Jen, please talk to him. I beg you both." Debbie looked pleadingly into my eyes. I immediately realized that this was my test as a man. Yes, I loved her. No matter how betrayed I felt, I still loved her. But still, what she did was unforgivable. But I felt that throwing her out just like that would be wrong. But I will never trust her again. "Jen is moving here and into my bedroom," I said, looking into her eyes. I saw her wince. "I understand," she said, choking back a sob. "I deserve it. I need to talk to her about you. Is it clear?" The door closed, Trevor left, and Jen returned. "What are you going to do with her?" she asked. "Do you know that she can't be trusted, right?" "I know," I answered. "I'm not going to." Debbie looked at each of us in despair. "Please," was all she said. "Shut up," Jen replied and pushed her back to the floor. Debbie lay there for a second or two and then returned to her knees. "Carson, please don't divorce me." "Get your things and go, Debbie," I told her. "Get your things together for at least a week, and we'll talk about how you'll get the rest when you need it." When she nodded and began to sob again, her face showed despondency and sad agreement. She slowly got up and went to the bedroom to get her things. 40 minutes later, she had packed 2 suitcases, a travel bag, a laptop bag, and a purse. Jen and I watched her load everything into her car, standing side by side as she pulled over for the last time. She reached out to me, but I pulled away. She sobbed again and left in tears. "Everything went better than we thought," Jen said, leaning towards me. "They brought this on themselves," I added as we watched my soon-to-be ex-wife's car drive off into the distance. Every spouse has the opportunity to cheat. Not everyone does this. Funny, she said, returning with me. What's so funny? I asked Jen while she was undressing. Some people think they have an open marriage, but they forget to tell their spouse about this. Do you want an open relationship? She asked when I pulled away. Too much like dating others, I replied. Do you need it? I just need something different every now and then, Carson. It's been a while since I tried any variety. Then sometimes I may need another one, I answered. We agree, she said, breathless. 3 months later, the divorce took place. Both Jen and I got the 70% we asked for. Jen sold her house, and I took out a loan to pay Debbie 30% of the house she owned. In one day in court, all financial and legal issues were resolved, but not Debbie's pain and guilt. She lost everything except her job. Her parents eventually found out when she started preparing them in case I sent them videos and photos out of spite. I've never done this. Trevor simply disappeared after his divorce from Jen was final. She had enough money to buy him out, but the last thing he told her was that he would be in touch. It's been 2 years and we haven't heard anything from him. Debbie still works and travels. What she does doesn't matter to me anymore. The other day, Jen and I were at a cafe and she walked by busy with her phone. Jen and I live together, but we're both afraid of serious commitment. It's been a year since my divorce and my memories of my time with Debbie are fading. Jen and I are talking about traveling around the world. The other day, I received a letter from Debbie. Hello, Carson. Hope you are healthy. I'm trying to live my new life, but to be honest, it's not easy. I miss our time together. I miss you and us. I've had so much time to think about what I did to you, to me, and to us. I ruined everything by thinking I deserved to have everything I wanted, no matter what it was. In my quest for sexual experimentation, self-indulgence, and self-fulfillment, I hurt the man I loved and lost my marriage. Not to mention that she helped destroy Jenny and Trevor's marriage. It would be so easy to blame him for what happened, but we all know that's not true. Everything I did voluntarily. Nobody forced me. I owe you an apology, Carson. Not only for ruining our marriage and our life together, but also for, as you said, losing respect for you. But before I did that, I lost self-respect. I succumbed to the belief that I deserved the pleasure and experienced what I missed out on. So, I have experience behind me that I never expected. Divorce. Nothing about that. Nothing attracts or satisfies at all. He tore me apart. I heard that you and Jen are still together. I wish you both happiness. But to say that I'm not jealous would be a lie. Take care of yourself and Jen. Your, unfortunately, ex-wife. With love, Debbie. P.S. 2 things. Loneliness sucks. What happens outside the home means a lot. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.